If you were born today, you would enter a world where this war has always existed. You would grow up hearing words like sanctions, NATO, drones, and annexation before you even understand what they mean. You would see maps on the news with red and blue lines. You would hear sirens in cities hundreds of miles apart. And you might ask, how did this begin? Why are Russia and Ukraine at war? And why has it lasted so long? This is that story. Ukraine and Russia share deep historical roots. For centuries, their cultures, languages, and economics were intertwined. Both were part of the Soviet Union, a powerful communist state that existed until 1991. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine became an independent country. Russia remained the largest successor state. From that moment, Ukraine faced a question that could shape its future. Should it align more closely with Russia or with Europe and the West? In 2014, protests erupted in Ukraine's capital, Kiev. Many Ukrainians wanted closer ties with the European Union, more democracy, more economic opportunity, less corruption. Ukraine's pro-Russian president fled the country. Soon after, Russia moved quickly. Russian forces took control of Crimea, a peninsula in southern Ukraine that hosts Russia's Black Sea naval base. Russia annexed Crimea. Ukraine and the most of the world called it illegal. At the same time, armed conflicts began in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk and Luhansk regions between Ukraine forces and Russian-backed separatists. From 2014 to 2021, more than 14,000 people died in that regional conflict. But the fighting remained limited until 2022. Throughout 2021, Russia began moving massive numbers of troops towards Ukraine's borders. Satellite images showed tanks and artillery gathering. Western governments warned an invasion was coming.
The Russian forces are planning to and intend to attack Ukraine in the coming week, in the coming days. We believe that they will target Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, a city of 2.8 million innocent people. We're calling out Russia's plans loudly and repeatedly, not because we want a conflict, but because we're doing everything in our power to remove any reason that Russia may give to justify invading Ukraine and prevent them from moving. Make no mistake, if Russia pursues its plans, it will be responsible for a catastrophic and needless war of choice. But the bottom line is this: the United States and our allies and partners will support the Ukrainian people. We will hold Russia accountable for its actions. The West is united and resolved. We're ready to impose severe sanctions on Russia if it further invades Ukraine. But I say again, Russia can still choose diplomacy. It is not too late to de-escalate and return to the negotiating table.
Russia denied it. Russian President Vladimir Putin argued that NATO, a military alliance that includes the United States and many European countries, had expanded too far east. Ukraine had expressed interest in joining NATO. For Moscow, that was seen as a security threat. For Kiev, it was a sovereign choice. Tensions reached a breaking point. Before sunrise, Putin announced what he called a special military operation.
Обстоятельства требуют от нас решительных и незамедлительных действий. Народные республики Донбасса обратились к России с просьбой о помощи. В связи с этим, в соответствии со статьей 51 части 7 Устава ООН, санкции Совета Федерации России и во исполнение ратифицированных Федеральным собранием 22 февраля сего года договоров о дружбе и взаимопомощи с Донецкой Народной Республикой и Луганской Народной Республикой мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции. Ее цель – защита людей, которые на протяжении 8 лет подвергаются издевательствам, геноциду со стороны киевского режима. Призываю вас немедленно сложить оружие и идти домой. Поясню. Все военнослужащие украинской армии, которые выполнят это требование, смогут беспрепятственно покинуть зону боевых действий и вернуться к своим семьям. Кто бы ни пытался помешать нам, а тем более создать угрозы для нашей страны, для нашего народа, должны знать, что ответ России будет незамедлительным и приведет вас к таким последствиям, с которыми вы в своей истории еще никогда не сталкивались.
Minutes later, missiles struck Ukraine. Airports were bombed, military bases were targeted, explosions echoed across Kiev, Kharkiv, Odessa and Mariupol. Russian forces attacked from the north through Belarus, the east from Russian territory, the south from Crimea. For millions of Ukrainians, life changed overnight. Parents walked children and ran to basement. Traffic jams clogged highways as families tried to flee. The invasion had begun. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky was a former actor. Few expected him to become a wartime leader. He was offered evacuation by Western allies, but he refused. In a video recorded on the streets of Kiev, he said, "We are here." That moment became a symbol of resistance.
Голова Офісу президента тут, прем'єр-міністр Шмигаль тут, Подоляк тут, президент тут. Всі ми тут, наші військові тут, громадяни суспільства тут, всі ми тут. Захищаємо нашу незалежність, нашу державу. І так буде й далі. Слава нашим захисникам, слава нашим захисницям. Слава Україні!
Ukraine would fight. The early weeks were chaotic. Russian forces advanced towards Kiev, but were eventually pushed back. In towns like Bucha and Irpin, destructions shook the world. In Mariupol, civilians were trapped for weeks without water or electricity. A theater sheltering families was bombed. In eastern Ukraine, cities became battlefields. Bakhmut was fought over for months. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. When Russia failed to capture Kiev quickly, it shifted focus to eastern and southern Ukraine. The war became slower and deadlier. Artillery drills, drone strikes, trench warfare remnants of World War I. Russia also targeted Ukraine's power grid. In winter, millions lost electricity and heating. Blackouts became normal. But Ukraine adapted, repairing infrastructure, improving air defenses, and launching counter-offensives. In late 2022, Ukraine recaptured territory in Kharkiv and the city of Kherson. But the front lines eventually hardened. The war became a stalemate. While most destructions occurred inside Ukraine, Russia faced consequences. Western nations imposed sweeping sanctions, freezing foreign reserves, cutting banks from global systems, restricting technology exports. Hundreds of foreign companies left Russia. Yet, Russia adapted. It expanded trade with China and India. It strengthened military ties with Iran. Energy exports were redirected. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drone strikes began hitting Russian territory, targeting oil depots and military bases, even near Moscow. The war was no longer distant for Russians. This war affected more than 2 countries. Food prices surged because Ukraine is a major grain exporter. Energy prices rose across Europe. Millions of refugees fled to Poland, Germany, and beyond. NATO expanded, with few members joining the alliance. The geopolitical map shifted, and for the first time in decades, Europe faced prolonged, high-intensity war. Let's look at the role of the European Union and global powers. From the beginning of the war, the European Union and Western nations condemned Russia's invasion. The EU, the US and UK and other allies imposed sanctions on Russia, including trade restrictions, asset freezes, and limits on investment aimed at weakening Russia's economy. The EU also provided financial, humanitarian, and military aid to Ukraine while welcoming millions of Ukrainian refugees who fled the fighting. Yet, as the conflict continued into its fourth year, divisions appeared. In February 2026, Hungary blocked new EU sanctions against Russia and a major financial aid package for Ukraine, causing friction within the bloc. Tens of thousands of soldiers on both sides have been killed or wounded. Thousands of Ukrainian civilians have died. Millions have been displaced. Children have grown up knowing only sirens and checkpoints. Families have been separated across borders. Entire towns may never look the same again. If you were born today, this war would shape your childhood, even if you lived thousands of miles away. Ukraine says it fights for survival, independence, and sovereignty.
I wanted very much to have in this security guarantees. My question is how partners will react on the aggression of Russia, if it will be. The answer is that it will not be. It's not the answer to me. I'm sorry. We have good things in these guarantees. It's true between us. It's true. But I want very specific answer what partners will be ready to do if Putin will come again. And I think this is what Ukrainians want to hear. Just want to hear. I'm sorry, it's not pressure. It's just to understand.
If you get those security guarantees, would you be willing to accept a frozen front line whereby Russia keeps the territory that they have already seized?
We already said that we're ready for the compromise to freeze the points where we stay, the places. It's a frozen contact line. We are ready for this. It's not a very good position for us, but in any way we have defending lines. We have these fortifications. But if Russians or partners in dialogue with Russians want just to withdraw our army from our fortifications, I mean this, we can't be such, foolish guys. We are not children.
Russia says it fights for security and strategic stability.
У них нет мирной повестки. Они же на стороне войны. И даже тогда, когда они пытаются якобы внести какие-то изменения в предложение Трампа, мы же это отчетливо видим. Все эти изменения направлены только на одно, на то, чтобы вообще заблокировать весь этот мирный процесс. Выдвинуть такие требования, которые для России являются абсолютно неприемлемыми, они это понимают, и тем самым свалить потом на Россию сворачивание этого мирного процесса. Мы не собираемся воевать с Европой, я уже об этом 100 раз сказал. Но если Европа вдруг захочет с нами воевать и начнет, мы готовы прямо сейчас. Если Европа вдруг захочет начать с нами войну и начнет ее, то очень может быстро произойти ситуация, при которой нам не с кем будет договориться.
Peace talks have been attempted but have not produced a lasting settlement. The demands remain far apart, and so the war continues. If you were born today, you would not remember this morning before the missiles. You would not know a Europe without this war. But history will record that on February 24th, 2022, the world shifted. This conflict has reshaped alliances, economies, and lives. It has reminded the world that peace is fragile, and it has shown how deeply history, identity, and power can collide. 4 years later, the outcome remains uncertain, but the impact is undeniable. And for a generation growing up in its shadow, this war is not just history, it is their present. This is the history of the war between Russia and Ukraine.
Сьогодні рівно 4 роки, як Путін бере Київ за 3 дні. І ось це, насправді, дуже багато говорить про наш спротив, про те, як же бореться Україна весь цей час. За цими словами мільйони наших людей, за цими словами велика сміливість, дуже важка робота, витримка і великий шлях, який Україна долає з 24 лютого. Цей кабінет, ця маленька кімната в бункері на Банковій, тут були перші мої розмови з лідерами світу на початку війни. Я тут говорив з президентом Байденом, саме тут почув: Володимире, є загроза, вам треба терміново залишити Україну. Ми готові в цьому допомогти. І я тут відповів, що мені потрібна зброя, а не таксі. Путін не досягнув своїх цілей, не зламав українців, не переміг в цій війні. Ми зберегли Україну, і ми зробимо все, щоб здобути мир і щоб була справедливість.
Годы мы отмечаем с особым.
In recent years we have marked this day with a special sense of pride and gratitude. We honor all those who, with courage and bravery, and with love for Russia and our people, carry out their military duty in the zone of the special military operation. They guard our borders and uphold strategic parity. Russia is fighting for its future, for its independence, for truth and justice.